Hello, and welcome to the third and final part of my Spike Lee director review. Today, I will be covering 8 movies, 2 of which I saw a while ago, 2018 and 2020 to be exact, and I did not rewatch them for this video, just due to lack of time. So there's a lot to cover in this video, so let's get started right away with Inside Man. A tough detective matches wits with a cunning bank robber as a tense hostage crisis is unfolding. Into the volatile situation comes a woman named Madeline, a mysterious power broker who has a hidden agenda and threatens to push a tense situation past the breaking point. Inside Man is on Prime in Canada. I was a bit confused thinking it was on Netflix, but maybe it was previously and now it's moved to Prime. And it's on HBO Max in the US. Man, this cast was stacked with great actors. I mean, Denzel Washington, Jodie Foster, Christopher Plummer, Willem Dafoe, and Chiwetel Ejiofor. I mean, excellent cast all around, from the cops to the robbers to the elite trying to cover the whole thing up. I had so much fun figuring out what would happen next and being shocked by how it went differently. I loved how he showed the audience the racism within the police force in how they treated the different hostages based on their race. All the twists and turns the movie takes makes it all the more exciting to watch. This is a great one. And probably one that not many people have seen. Now let's move on to the next film, Miracle at St. Anna. During World War II, members of the U.S. Army's All-Black Division are stationed in the Tuscany region of Italy. 4 of the soldiers become trapped behind enemy lines and separated from the rest of their unit after one of them risks his life to save an Italian boy. Miracle at St. Anna is on Hoopla in Canada, if your library has it, or on the Roku channel, Hoopla, and IMDb TV in the US. The Roku channel and IMDb TV are both ad-supported. While watching this film, I couldn't help but compare it to Spike Lee's other war film, Da 5 Bloods, which I will be covering later on. And even based on the premise, you can tell, okay, it's a all black army division. Same thing with Da 5 Bloods. It's just a different war, World War II instead of the Vietnam War. I was more connected emotionally with those characters in Da 5 Bloods than these ones. The likely reasoning is that they had great chemistry and were much more experienced actors. Spike Lee also used Hanoi Hannah in that film better than Axis Sally in this film. Overall, this was quite a boring war film with a few good moments, and it may have been better had they focused solely on the past and omitted the present day elements, which I felt were the weakest elements of the film. Let's move on to the third film I'll be covering, Red Hook Summer. A well-to-do Atlanta teen documents a summer spent in the Brooklyn housing projects with his devout grandfather. That's it. Otherwise, they'd be giving a bit too much away from the plot. Especially the end. This is streaming on Hoopla or Tubi in both Canada and the US. Tubi is an ad-supported streaming service. And Hoopla, again, as I've said before, is if your library has it. I want to say how poor and stilted the 2 children are at acting. Despite this, Clark Peters knows exactly what type of movie he's in and redeems most of the scenes he's in. Thomas Jefferson Byrd is also pretty good, but his character doesn't really need to be there. I didn't feel that he needed to be there anyways. The church singing sequences were very fun to watch, and I'd probably chalk that up to John Baptiste. Although these sequences were fun to watch, the score and music choices were discordant with the scenes and overpowering a lot of the time. I have to mention that it felt sponsored by Apple with blatant product placement and story integration. I'm saying that while using my sister's MacBook to film, although I generally don't use Apple products. Anyways, I will admire the. I will admit that the late stage twist was shocking and effectively used, although I wish it were more prominent. Overall, the story had too much going on with the grandfather-grandson relationship, Flick and Chaz's relationship, and the Good Bishop's seedy past. It should have been paired, they should have pared some of the storylines down in favor of others, potentially setting up the reveal earlier, leaving more time to deal with the repercussions that they really kind of didn't cover. They glossed over a lot of that, and that was kind of a disappointment because they should have gone a little bit more into it. Some additional thoughts. I loved the stunning and different use of Spike Lee's double dolly trademark. He used it to, I love how he used it to increase tension in revealing the bishop's misdeeds by slowing it down, really, really increasing that tension. I also learned about his cinematic universe, Chronicles of Brooklyn, from this film, because, spoilers, Mookie from Do the Right Thing also is in this movie. And now we should move on to Chi-Raq. After the murder of a child by a stray bullet, a group of women led by Lysistra organize against the ongoing violence in Chicago's South Side, creating a movement that challenges the nature of race, sex, and violence in America and around the world. It is streaming on Prime in both Canada and the US, although for a brief period it was not streaming in Canada. But they've recently brought that back, as well as a lot of the Amazon Prime originals. They've taken them off and now they're bringing them back, so that's great. I enjoy the script's rhyming aspect, which made it feel like a play. Tiana Paris, who you may have seen in WandaVision and you will see in The Marvels, was an admirable lead, but Nick Cannon should have been recast for a better actor. One of the movie's main flaws is that its messaging is right on the surface and isn't as subtle in its indictment of gang violence and toxic masculinity, among other issues. There are also quite a few moments of overacting and corny dialogue that had me laughing at the movie rather than with it. Even if they wanted me to laugh. The resolution of this film is also easier said than done, and a bit too optimistic considering the world in which we live. I will say this is actually, fun fact, Amazon's first original film that they've released on their service. So that's a really interesting fact. Now we will move on to the next film, Pass Over. Moses and Kitch, two young black men, chat their way through a long, aimless day on a Chicago street corner, periodically ducking bullets and managing visits from a genial but ominous stranger and an overtly hostile police officer. Moses and Kitch rely on their banter to get them through a day that is a hopeless retread of every other day, even as they continue to dream of their deliverance. Pass Over is also streaming on Prime in both Canada and US and is a Prime original. I want to preface this by saying that going into it, I didn't realize that this was a stage play rather than a film. The acting is okay, with a few standout moments, but overall, they can only do so much with the writing they've been given. One of the standout moments is how I felt the tension and suspicion that the main characters felt when the nice white man shows up. Other scenes to mention are them listing who had been killed by the cops and the entire ending sequence, their attempted suicide, the cops showing up to stop them, not save them, as some IMDb reviews would suggest, Moses summoning the plagues against the crooked cop, which was foreshadowed earlier in the play, and Mr. coming back to make it all white, or in his perspective, right. Most of the dialogue between the two lead characters has them say the N-word at least once or twice. So plenty of times throughout this film. Probably I would count it at like 300 or something. And that's within an hour, so a lot. While I'm not wholly uncomfortable with Spike Lee's uses of this word in other films, this seemed quite excessive, although he's not really to blame since he didn't write the play. He just filmed it, or directed it anyways. This play is an allegory for a plantation set on a street in Chicago in many ways, and it actually mentions that a couple times. And it took me actually a bit longer than I thought to figure that out. And while I don't feel much happens in this story, a few elements worked to send a message, although they were slapping you across the face with it. The production design and costumes were minimalistic, but I enjoyed the stage lighting with the street light and the yellow spotlight for the sun. Let's move on to BlacKkKlansman for the next movie. This one I had already seen before. This is just, my thoughts after the fact. Ron Stallworth is the first African-American detective to serve in the Colorado Springs Police Department. Determined to make a name for himself, Stallworth bravely sets out on a dangerous mission: infiltrate and expose the Ku Klux Klan. The detective soon recruits a more seasoned colleague, Flip Zimmerman, into the undercover investigation of a lifetime. Together, they team up to take down the extremist hate group as the organization aims to sanitize its rhetoric to appeal to the mainstream. BlacKkKlansman is available for rent or purchase in Canada and on Spectrum in the US. Very hard to find, although you can probably find it at local libraries if you want to check it out. I just want to say I went to see this in theaters when it first came out. It was one of the first Spike Lee film I'd ever seen, and I really enjoyed it. This was an engaging and heartbreaking story infused with Spike Lee's direction and humor, and ending with a warning for today. John David Washington and Adam Driver were perfectly cast in their roles and showcased a grand level of gravitas. I've listened to the audiobook of this biography of the movie, biography of the actual person that this movie was based on long after watching the movie, and the movie is much more captivating. So if you are interested in the story, I would say check out the movie rather than necessarily the book, although maybe the movie is a bit more dramatized, so that's why it's more interesting. Let's move on to the second to last film I will be covering, Da 5 Bloods. 4 African-American veterans battle the forces of man and nature when they return to Vietnam looking for the remains of their fallen squad leader and the gold fortune he helped them hide. This is a Netflix original, and as such is streaming on Netflix in Canada and the US. This was a visceral experience once it got going. I had to watch it in 2 sittings, but not because it wasn't good. I was just tired from working all week when I had seen this movie. The way he used the present day actors in the past, showing their minds had never left Vietnam once the war was over, was absolutely brilliant. The biggest disappointment is that Delroy Lindo wasn't nominated for an Academy Award for his performance in this movie, which is an absolute crime considering how good he was in this film. The monologue while he was walking through the forest alone should have gotten him the nomination. The rest of the cast were incredible as well. And as I mentioned before, the way he used Hanoi Hannah in this film was better than he had used Axis Sally in Miracle at Santana. And there were plenty of other reasons why this is so great. But I can't really mention them at this point because I haven't seen it since 2020, so I don't remember everything. Now let's move on to the final film I will cover, David Byrne's American Utopia, which isn't really a film, it's a concert documentary. Singer David Byrne and a group of international musicians perform songs from the hit Broadway musical American Utopia.
David Byrne's American Utopia is available for streaming on Crave in Canada and HBO Max in the United States.
Again, as I said, this is a concert documentary, and it was brilliant. The choreography was simple, yet coordinated. The lighting cues are exceptional, and the music is so amazing that I dare you to try not to bob your head or tap or mouth/sing along to the words. Some standout songs, either due to lyrics or performance, included the opening song Here, I Should Watch TV, Once in a Lifetime, I Dance Like This, especially the black and white segment, Bullet, and Blind, especially the use of the camera tilt and shadows. I can't neglect to mention how much Hell You Talking About had me tearing up. It was great how they ended by mentioning so many other names that they didn't have time to mention in this actual song. including those that were killed after this was filmed, to cap it off with the powerful, hopeful, and emotional song One Fine Day was so perfect that while I enjoyed Road to Nowhere for how fun it was, especially them walking around through the audience, I did feel as though One Fine Day would have been a better ending overall. Now, before I get to the ranking, I'm going to talk a little bit about a few other things. So I'm going to start by talking about the different movies I skipped. Most of them I skipped for time or low rating on IMDb. Usually I aim for 7 and above, and sometimes I go a little bit over or under, sorry, just based on, if it's close enough or if the premise is interesting enough. And especially with Spike Lee, I had to go under quite a bit just because he's a little bit of a divisive director. There is also, I may have skipped it due to disinterest. Some of these I actually considered including later on in my watch through, but I watched the trailer and was not interested, so I just left them off. There are a lot of documentaries that I skipped as well. Those I may actually check out later because some of them seem really interesting. But I'm going to say the movies that I did skip, just so you know, Girl 6, which came out in 1996, She Hate Me, which came out in 2004, Sucker Free City, which is also a movie that came out in 2004. It was more so a TV movie. Old Boy, which is a remake that came out in 2013. I haven't seen the original yet, so I'd rather see that before I decide if I want to check out this remake. And the other one that I skipped was The Sweet Blood of Jesus, which came out in 2019. I believe that's also a Prime original. Now, one thing I did want to mention is there are director trademarks that you notice while watching every or a large amount of films from a certain director. So some of the director trademarks that I noticed from Spike Lee is that a lot of his films are set in Brooklyn, and the earlier films that he made were either starring him as one of the lead characters or he was playing a cameo role, especially as his career went on until more recently. The way he's not really in any of his films, even in a cameo role, other than Red Hook Summer. I would also like to mention his use of social themes. He's always wanting to talk about what is going on in today's time, issues people are facing today. So that is something that he has done throughout. He's always had strong female characters in his movies. He uses saturated colors in a lot of his shots. He uses grainy, high contrast shots. He has the actors talking to camera and breaking the fourth wall. As I mentioned, again, that forest monologue that was a great part of Da 5 Bloods was a actor talking to the camera monologue, and that was a long one. And another trademark is the double dolly shot, which I also had mentioned previously. That's in a lot of his movies, and he uses it in different ways, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I will admit that. And then the last thing I will mention is his wake up, his call to the audience to wake up. He's used that in quite a few movies. And yeah, again, based on the social themes that he's mentioning, he's telling the audience, wake up, see what I see. Now I'm going to move on to talking about my Letterboxd stats updates. This is just, I use Letterboxd to track all the movies I watch. And part of that, you get to see a whole bunch of stats, especially as a pro member. So one of the things I want to mention is after doing this, my most watched actor of all time stays the same. It's still Samuel L. Jackson, but now he's at 43 films total. I think it was before I had watched this, it was 39. So, he's still quite ahead of the second place in the most watched actor, which are Seth Rogen and Adam Sandler at 29 films apiece. For this year, my most watched actor is now Spike Lee with 9 films. And most of the most watched actors are now shifted from Planet of the Apes to Spike Lee films. So that was how it was usually, because a lot of the people reprised their roles. Now, again, I'm going to talk about my most watched of all time. Spike Lee is now my most watched director of all time with 21 films. He's also my most watched screenwriter at 15 films, although Charlie Booker is just one behind with 4 episodes remaining of Black Mirror, which he will take this top spot again at some point once I finish those episodes. Ruth E. Carter, who's the costume designer on many of Spike Lee's films, is now moved from tied for 9th place to my most watched costume designer with the addition of 9 movies for a total of 19. And Terrence Blanchard has entered the list, my list, for most watched composers with the addition of 11 movies for a total of 15 and ranked at number 18. Now let's move on to the ranking for the movies I've covered in this video. So at number 8, we have Passover, which I rated a 2.5 out of 5. At number 7 is Red Hook Summer with a 2.5 out of 5. At number 6 is Miracle at St. Anna with a 2.5 out of 5. I see a recurring theme. At number 5 is Chi-Raq with a 3 out of 5. At number 4 is David Byrne's American Utopia at 4 out of 5. At number 3 is Inside Man with a 4.5 out of 5. At number 2 is BlacKkKlansman with a 4.5 out of 5. And at number 1 is Da 5 Bloods with 4.5 out of 5. And the average rating, I will mention, of all the Spike Lee films I've seen is a 3.17 out of 5. So very middle of the road, generally speaking. But there are some standouts, and there are some that are lower. My top 10 Spike Lee films of all the ones I've seen. At number 10, we've got 25th Hour. At number 9 is Mo Better Blues. At number 8, She's Gotta Have It. At number 7, Get on the Bus. At number 6, Malcolm X. At number 5, David Byrne's American Utopia. At number 4, Inside Man. At number 3, BlacKkKlansman. At number 2, Da 5 Bloods. And at number 1, Do the Right Thing, which I believe is his masterpiece. I want to thank you all for watching this series and these videos, especially this one. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any suggestions or information you'd like to share, leave a comment down below. If you would like to see more from me, hit the subscribe button. The next video I will be doing is a Steve McQueen director review, so stay tuned for that. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.